This is Leave It to Geezer with your host, Danny Murphy. I'm recording today with Dick Erickson, who founded Sun Tire in Jacksonville in the 80s and had 9 stores in Northeast Florida and 2 in Tallahassee when he sold the business in 2017. Now, you attribute much of your success in business to your profit-sharing plan. Please tell listeners how you became interested in profit-sharing and how you learned to put a program together.
Yes. After probably, 8-10 years on my own, I could see that I wasn't growing like I felt that there's something missing here. There had to be something that was holding me back. And I heard about this company out in the West Coast, Les Schwab Tire, and they were kind of the darling everyone talked about. But, a long ways away, I didn't know anyone out there. And so I... through a visit to them, I found the one thing that they surely had that we didn't have was a defined profit-sharing program.
And what do you mean by defined profit sharing?
Well, what I mean by that is the day you start, there is a program laid out for you, and it was for everyone in the company. They knew exactly by their position how much of the profits they would share in the store they're in. It was not arbitrary at the end of the year. Let's see, we had a tough year, so we're not going to do much profit sharing. Or it was a big year, we'll take care of the senior guys for sure, and some will dribble down to the latest hires. That was not our program. We had 100% participation in the sharing of the profits, and we did it by splitting the profits in half, which is what I learned on the West Coast. Take half the profits, half of the profits were defined to the employees.
And the owner got the other half.
The owner had the other half, and that was the incentive. And he kept the ownership in their program. And so that can be moved around a little bit, but I found that worked perfect. And most of the time, the employees were more interested in the profits than they were to have minority interest in a business.
So the defined part of the program means that it was written out, it was laid out in a way that everybody could understand.
It was so transparent. At the end of every month, you knew exactly what you had put back for that month. In some cases, on the entry level, those people would actually get their share of the profits every month. The more senior people, it was quarterly or end of the year.
So in business, you were known as an idea leech, and you weren't ashamed of that. You weren't ashamed to copy another good business's ideas.
No, I wasn't, Danny. I mean, it was. I kind of chuckle when I think about it, but it seems to make such sense. If someone's already figured out the program, why would I go out and spend years trying to figure it out on my own if I could? And versus, how about if I just go and meet these people or sit down, just like right now, if I saw a good idea, I'm meeting with a guy this week on something like that.
Now, you tried to get in the front door at Les Schwab Tire. You couldn't get through the gatekeeper. Tell us about how you befriended somebody and got to get an inside look at what they were doing.
Well, I made that phone call, and they, in a nice way, told me that they had people every day trying to come out and visit them, and they became the icon in the industry. And so they just didn't have time for that. And I thought, well, I wasn't going to give up that easy. So I ended up in a tire buying group that I found out the Les Schwab group was in. And so I made sure at the party I figured out who those people were. And I shimmied up to them at the bar and got to know them. And after a couple meetings like that, they asked me, well, why don't you come out and see us? And boy, of course, the next day I'm putting that one together. And I went out there for 19 successive years, probably 2 and 3 day period, and got what I could without being pushy. And a lot of it was observation, got to know some of these people. He started sharing, wasn't necessarily secrets, but I mean, it wasn't something without them telling me. It would take much longer to figure out how they shared what percentage went to certain people. And so that after 19 years, as we say in North Dakota, I milked that cow dry, and I was ready to get it put into my own. I already had it started, but kind of getting the fine tuning took a few more years, and that was part of the 19 years.
What about your first few visits to Les Schwab Tire stores? You saw things that were different from other tire stores.
Well, Danny, I'm telling you, you drove up, and they were standing beside your car when you got out. And they greeted you and put you in touch with someone who could, and usually they were the tire changers themselves. They jumped off the machine, came out, and directed you to someone inside. And so it was, the friendliness was unbelievable. I just couldn't believe. And there was a plan going on, and as I went to different stores, it was, everyone did it the same way. No, you got greeted at the number one thing, and the number one thing when I talked to strangers that I met out there on, when we got kind of through and had an extra day, we'd just kind of wander around Portland and get to know some of the people and ask the questions, where do you buy your tires? And they'd say, they just kind of looked at you like, Les Schwab Tires. Only one person that I met in those years said something different, and this sounds kind of, over the top, and they said, well, I've only been in town for a few months, but I hear Les Schwab Tire is the place to buy tires. And so they had a reputation, but what they remembered is that people came out and greeted you at the car. More than one thing, something as simple as that.
And that customer service was really a byproduct of the profit sharing, wasn't it?
Yes. Well, what happened is once these people became stakeholders, using that expression that they got a piece of the action, they were part of the structure of the company, they were very sensitive how the customer was being treated, because that was their sharing of the profit, would give them a step up on the profitability. If anyone was not friendly or was slow at getting the customers, they'd get called out by their teammates, not necessarily management, because teammates are right across they're right there. So it was unbelievable of what we saw of the teamwork of the employee themselves. You had to figure out, it was hard to figure out who the manager was. It was that close, because he might be out helping out on a tire machine because they were busy at that point. And but there was a manager and there was an assistant manager. Yeah.
So you copied a lot of the ideas about profit sharing from what you saw at Les Schwab Tire. But you didn't do everything exactly the same way, did you?
No. And that's the thing I would say. And most programs I've found out in my years, you have to sometimes, especially if you already got a going operation, you kind of have to temper a new program to your program a little bit. I tried too quick to implement the whole program, kind of changed mine. I lost close to half of my team, my senior team, within a year, and I made a fatal mistake just about. I was able to, but it took me a few years to replace that team and get going again. And then when I came out with the program the second time, I did it in bits and pieces, and I did it by the stores that were ready. If it was a brand new store and the crew wasn't gelled yet, I'd hold off on them, and we had certain matrix that we would look for. When they hit that, we'd say, okay, you ready to get aboard? Yeah, okay, now you're on the program.
What would you say are the prerequisites for a business owner who wants to start a profit-sharing plan?
Well, first of all, you got to have profits. So you kind of, but the program, the ideal would be, Danny, I firmly believe, is that you know the structure that you want to get put together. And to do that, and it might take a couple years to get it profitable, but you put the structure together, and then, but with the idea that you don't have to change something down the road. Once the profits get there to a certain level, you had to get it up in the company. We were at 5-6. When we got to $250,000, $250,000 is when I initiated the program the first time. But anyhow, So you got to have a game plan to start, and it's kind of the how. You already figured out the why. Well, why are we going to do this? Because what it energizes the company. It's unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. I've seen different profiles. Some people have sharing of stock. That has a short-term profits. Our guys knew daily how profitable their store was. We did, the numbers came out then daily. A lot of them hang around. How good a day did we have, boss? Well, we made this kind of money today. It was a good day, and that's at the end of the month we would tally up, and they knew what percentage of that was theirs.
So you had a number, $250,000. You had to have that in net profit before you would undertake this profit-sharing plan.
Yes, that I kind of backed into that, Danny, because we were already operating 10, 15 years when that came about. So, but I couldn't bust through 250, and I had a new right-hand man that joined us, and he had a lot of experience, and he said, "What's it going to take for us to put this program together?" I said, "You show me $250,000 net profit in a year, and it'll be." He put that. He got his head around that. Next year we hit our 250, and we're off and running from that point. And the profitability in this type program was what we found. The profit that I saw when I went out to the West Coast was double ours, and we were considered a pretty well-run tire company with a good profit. Theirs was double. Now you have that. Now you're back to where I was, and your employees had half of the profits. They had their profit sharing in that. They had their cash bonuses in there. Those two things that came from their share of the profits. And my old program, we didn't have a retirement plan. So I think I said anyhow, the retirement plan and the actual cash deal that came out of their share of the profits. That was very important to the employees we found. It drove the business. And we had matrix that you had to have a certain kind of net profit on certain things that we would do. We had a trip for the managers to the West Coast for the tire convention every year. They had to have a certain profitability and sell more tires than last year. Well, it drove it. I mean, no one just sold one more tire than last year, because last year we were in business. We sold 100,000 tires here in 2017. Actually, the year was over in March that year, but of 18. But anyhow, yeah. So everything was very open. The guys got a chance to see the full financial statements every month. They didn't take them home with them, but they were giving them in a store meeting, and everyone knew exactly what was going on.
Now, again, not to rehash too much, but that number, that magic number, $250,000 for you, was the right number. It's up to every business owner to figure out what's the right number for my business. Yeah. Is it $500,000? Is it $100,000? The business owner has to determine what that's going to be.
He does, and part of the deal is, in a well-run business, your banker's going to have a feeling for that. Your CPA, there's going to be what they feel is what's a healthy company. So it's a number that you could sit down with your team, the team being people outside of the immediate organization too, which would be your banker, your CPA, looking at numbers and saying, what's a healthy number so I can continue growing the company, but still share. Yeah.
Now, as far as the percentage shared, that also is determined by the owner. For you, it was 50%.
Yeah.
And for Les Schwab, but you didn't get there overnight.
No. And not every store got on. What we did is to personalize our deal is if a store was struggling for a while, we wouldn't put them on a full program. They still shared in the profits, but they didn't get as much of the profits because they weren't that profitable yet. Once they started hitting their numbers, boom. And they had to be, it was not a selection, but it was a little bit selected by the owner and say, okay, this person's ready. And some people say, well, why would you do that? Because you could have kept that. No. I was already found out that sharing with them was better by far than not sharing with them. Yeah.
So if an owner has the objective to share maybe, say, 25% of his profits at some point, he doesn't have to get there overnight. He could start off at 5% and build up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got the thing about profit sharing I found too is it's got to be a number that kind of tickles you. I mean, it makes you feel good. Because with the hourly employees, a well-run store, when they got their share of the profits and we divided it up at the end of the month, that check that they got, a separate check for their share of the profits, and a well-run company was like a fifth payday. It was another week's pay practically. And that wasn't their retirement plan. That was just their cash bonus.
So for a tire changer making $300 or $400 a week, getting an extra check at the end of the month, that's pretty exciting.
Yes. Yeah. And it would show up in the performance. If it was down a little bit, they'd be, well, what are we doing here? What does it take to get it back there? And they were very sensitive not to have too many employees. We need just enough employees to do the job. But the customer would have a lot to say about the service. We want to have enough employees, but we also want to make make the money we could too.
Well, another important component for owners to think about before is, what are my objectives as an owner? What's in it for me?
Well, that's interesting. It's kind of the why of the company. Why am I in this? And I know as an owner a lot of times, if I didn't start off there, I was a minority owner, and I found out minority owner in a small business isn't. After a few years, you kind of, where's this going? Because there's not a big market to sell your ownership in a small company other than to the owner that started it possibly. And he doesn't, in most cases, doesn't have to buy it. You might wait for a good year and say, okay, I'll buy you out when profit. So anyhow, I don't want to get too caught up with that. But so the deal was to figure out what it is. And to me, it was all about what does it take to make the customer happy and return to our place of business. And the service was the real issue. You still had to be priced right. You had to be competitive to do it. But the point was, it was more the service. And the service came from a happy employee that knew that he would benefit from this customer being very happy with his service.
Also, one of your objectives was loyalty and longevity from your employees. Tell me about that.
Well, to me, that made perfect sense. If you're training new employees every week, I was talking to a person as recent as yesterday that he got out of his business because he had too much turnover. He said, I was constantly, and the deal was to have a company. Now, his company, I didn't get into it, but they weren't sharing profits. And in a well-run company, you got the profit sharing going. The turnover just was not there at all as what it was from the years before because they go down the street and get a similar pay, and maybe I get some more time off or something. Here, they would pay the price because this one, we had store managers making a 6-digit income, and that was unheard of in our industry as far as around here. So whole deal is how do I keep people, because there's a cost to training people. There's a cost to bringing new people in and getting the service back to the level that you need to keep these customers happy. Taking care of the equipment, not to waste anything that wasn't necessary, whether it's wheel weights or things of that sort of things. Is utilize what was there, and they became owners in their minds of taking care of things, and that's what a stakeholder is all about. It was amazing of what the profit sharing brought to the table, but it had to be very transparent, it had to be very defined.